Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, we are having a lot of fun today on the Tuesday College Football Basketball Blitz. Rob Brown broadcasting live from the studios, Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. It is raining. It rained all night. Things continue as they are. We might have as much as 4 inches by Friday. Very important because duck season kicks back up. The split, the second season starts 30 minutes before sunrise Tuesday. So we need ducks. We need water. We got plenty of guns. We're ready for it. We're ready for duck season to get here. Doug Dean is going to join us from the Magic City, Birmingham, the AU Dose here in just a minute. Jimmy Hodge up in Lake Zurich, Illinois. Second segment, Dan Matthews checks in over in Atlanta. Executive producer, Southern Sports Today. Chuck and Chernoff on 680 The Fan in the Battery, 50 feet from the front entrance to the Braves Stadium, Truist Park. Is Truist really a word? I question that. I want a wordsmith to acknowledge it. Yay or nay, is it a marketing term? Anyway, top of hour number 2, our great friend Yancy Porter from Oxford, Mississippi checks in, host of the Rebel Yell Hotline. You can hear that Monday nights, 6 p.m. Central, and Super Talk Mississippi. Great programming. They need more time. I always say that. Segment 4, Coach John Brady, longtime basketball coach at Samford, LSU, Arkansas State, took the Tigers to the Final Four. He will join us. We'll talk some basketball. We're starting to transition. It is week 5, the week 5 of college basketball season. And, people say they should wait and start the season later, and then it would go later in the spring. Then it starts interfering with college baseball. So it's just that this first month when it's trying to compete with college football, a lot of these games, it's like they never happen. But anyway, Coach John Brady gonna weigh in with his thoughts, and we love talking with him. Thank you, Frank Duffy, for that connection, talking college basketball. We're here every Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week, 2 hours a day. Always follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. You can sync the car, truck, or your boat, or your plane, wherever you are, to www.sidelines.live and listen to us anywhere. I mean, so far, Robert Weaver, Dreamweaver, holds the record, the farthest listener, Peace River, Alberta, Canada, a mere 42-hour drive from Memphis, where he is a duck guide up there for a couple of months in the last couple of years in the fall, but a loyal and faithful listener on Peace River up in Canada. And that's strong. That's stronger than 50 acres of fresh cut onions. Let's see. Doug Dean, we got to get this. You mentioned something to me this morning. What about if we had a 12-team playoff? And I think about this. If we did have a 12-team playoff, how many teams that didn't get in, obviously, would be in there. But it's something Doug says will bend your brain. And I want to hear this. Doug Dean, the Magic City, I'll see you tomorrow night at the Elk Lodge meeting. I think you're up for Elk of the Year with your rack. Doug, let's get talking right now about the college football playoff. I was at the First Bank Christmas party last night. Had a great time. Katie said that was a lot of fun. A lot of great food. A lot of talk about college football. A lot of people going, hey, Rob, what you think about Hugh Freeze being there at Auburn? I mean, I'm excited, but Doug Dean, you're more excited than I am. Because you've got Mildred in the front seat with you as a pastor.
Rob, I'm getting a bad echo on my end. Are you not hearing an echo?
No, we're good on this end. So just make sure you don't have on. Yeah. Okay. Timmy, college football playoff rankings coming out, and it's just funny to me. Yesterday, and I stand by it. I think all the turnover, it just catches up with you after a while. We know what Nick Saban did in 2020. We know what he did last year. What we're talking about is this year. And I'm sure they're going to make some changes on their staff. They've got a big bowl game coming up against Kansas State. I hope Alabama shows up, because Kansas State's a good football team. I think a lot of the national media have been waiting to pounce on Alabama, and they do it because they are so jealous and so envious of what they've accomplished historically. They have the greatest tradition in college football, and I'm saying that because it's true. It's not Notre Dame. It's damn sure in Michigan or Ohio State, or it isn't Southern Cal. It's not Penn State. It's Alabama. So they are. But Doug Dean, let's try that again. Take two, Doug riding along in his automobile with Mildred in her moo-moo.
Rob, I'm going to do a test. You're one big, massive echo on my end, but can you hear me clean?
I can hear you clean, completely fine.
Okay, we'll try to do this with. I'm going to be a little handicapped hearing what you're saying because of the echo chamber. I don't know what's causing it. But before I get into any discussion maybe of interest for the three of us and your listening audience today, if you have not already, I wanted to pass along a big bravo to the great Ben Tamburello. He was, you may have seen, he got the Commissioner Sankey presented him with the Crystal SEC Football Legends honor, which is a big deal. And of course, you and Jimmy both, and people that are a little longer in the tooth, like the three of us, not to drag you down with me, will remember the significance of when Coach Dye was hired in '81, the significance of that. Were all the recruiting battles, but Tamburello, out of Shades Valley, is a kind of a consensus All-American recruit at the center position. Was pretty much like most people in Birmingham, most talented studs in Birmingham, was a Bama fan for life, was committed to Alabama, and why not with what Coach Bryant had done in that era. And of all weeks, the '82 Iron Bowl week, Tamburello, who's a friend of mine, reported or recalled he had two visits scheduled. On Tuesday and Wednesday, he was in Auburn, and then that following weekend of that bow over the top Iron Bowl game in '82, ending the long 9-year drought for Auburn people, Tamburello was at LSU of all places, and he was watching the Iron Bowl, and he said he found himself kind of pulling for Auburn, and he flipped. So that I don't know how accurate it is. Jimmy can fact check, but there are some who, maybe even the broadcasters, a year later, who would say that from Coach Bryant's point of view, not landing Tamburello was just one more data point in his thought process. Besides health challenges, his thought process, do I go ahead and step aside? So congratulations to the great Ben Tamburello. Expect to see him in Birmingham tomorrow night, Rob, with your friend Maury Gaston and my friend at the Monday Morning Quarterback Club big event. Tamburello usually makes that. So, Jimmy, is that historically accurate about the recruitment of Tamburello?
I really don't know. I do know that when Alabama lost to Southern Miss late in the year, and Southern Miss had that great team with the three NFL players, Sammy Winder, Lewis Lips, and Reggie Collier, that after the game, he was questioning his and his staff's ability to evaluate players at the high school level. And of course, after the LSU game, in which they lost that one, he openly just told the entire college football world that maybe Dr. Thomas should be looking at getting another head coach. So I think just their evaluation alone was being questioned by none other than Coach Bryant himself. And it was just a combination of things, I believe. And he sensed he was probably near the end of the line, and that, they were just ready to move on to another chapter. But now I don't know specifically when it comes to Ben Tamburello, but we all know of probably a couple of hundred players that ended up going to either Auburn or Alabama, who originally dreamed doing the opposite as they were growing up. So,
Yeah.
man, you could be telling those stories or of individual players until the next century.
Jimmy, I'll
Well,
tell you something. Doug, I'll tell you what Ben Tamburello did say. I think he said it on this show, was that he was, I think, on his official visit at Alabama for the Southern Miss game Jimmy just referred to, and they lost that game in Tuscaloosa. And after the game, I think they went back over, and I think they were eating in the cafeteria, and Ben was with his family, and I think they sat there. Coach Bryant was at their table, and there was not much discussion. It was just kind of and it worked out to where he got to spend a lot of the week during the week with Auburn and got to hang around when the students were gone for Thanksgiving. And Ben went to from Shades Valley and went to Tennessee Military Institute. And Doug, you're right. That was a big deal. And Ben is a class act, man. Guys like him and Greg Carr, they make you so damn proud. I mean, that's what student athletes are supposed to do. And Ben's got a son that graduated from Annapolis in the Marine Corps.
Well, and let me hasten to say Jimmy's right as usual that it's not exactly a unicorn in the state of Alabama, the way that rivalry goes and the way there's the old punchline about a mixed marriage with Auburn and Alabama. So it's certainly not unusual for a player to be interested, committed, heavy lean to either school and flip at the end for different reasons. But Jimmy, I just didn't want to let facts get in the way of a great story, right? It's just a more fun story for an Auburn guy with as down as we are to think of historically Ben Tamburello as shifting the massive tidal wave, if you'll pardon the Crimson Tide pun.
Well, that could very well be 100% fact. I just didn't know about that particular instance. One that I was very well aware of, though, was that Richard Todd had verbally committed to Auburn, and when he informed Coach Bryant, wished him well, and that type of thing. And then 2 or 3 days later, Richard called Coach Bryant back and asked him if that scholarship opening was still available, and Coach Bryant told him that it was, and the rest was history. And like I said, there are just so many countless stories like that, and you just never know how circumstances change, no matter if you grew up an Alabama fan and ended up going to Auburn or vice versa. That's another just unbelievable aspect of what makes this rivalry so different from all others.
That's right. And Rob, as I mentioned to you this morning, you're not going to break quite yet, are you?
No, we have got, let's see, a couple of more minutes before the break. Yeah, we got about 3.5 minutes before the break.
Maybe I can prime the pump on a subject that I confirmed with you over coffee this morning. Y'all had not already taken a deep dive into this, but with the, not surprising news, but still a bombshell in its own right of the imminent, the 24/25 season 12-team expansion to 12-team college football playoff. I did some research, which is easy to do. It's on everybody's mind, and I'm sure y'all have read about it. But the listeners might find it fascinating in this massively chaotic year in some ways. What's not chaotic is Georgia sits atop the rankings, and there's every reason to think they'll probably stay there through the final game, but that's why they play them. But tease this out, and then I'll let you go to break, and we can come back to it if you want. Right now, the consensus design they apparently would go to is when the dust settles, the 4 highest ranked conference champions. That's an important underscore, because this year being a conference champion didn't get you in the 4-team selection in every case. Witness TCU and Ohio State, but you would have Georgia, Michigan. So far, so good, right? As conference champions, they both get a bye.
Yeah.
And then this is where it gets distasteful to most people, unless you live in at Clemson. Clemson number 3, they get a bye because they're ACC champion, and the Utah Utes, the Pac-12 champion, get a bye. Something doesn't taste very fair about that, but that's how it would work. Following that, and then we can go to break if you need to. TCU number 5, Ohio State 6, Alabama number 7, and Tennessee Vols 8. And then when we come back, if you like, what would those matchups look like? And fascinatingly, which of the 4 teams that have to play the first, I guess it's quarterfinal, would get a home game, and we can talk about the excitement or the weirdness of all that when we come back.
Yeah, no, it is. And, I love watching the national critics is what they really are. A lot of them don't know that much about college football, but what they do know is they don't like the SEC, and they love to get their digs in the playoff. Alabama at number 5. Look, when the SEC, when we go to the 12-team playoff, Doug, I'm with you. There are going to be a lot of SEC schools. You might call it the SEC Invitational. But what we had happen there with Ohio State getting in, and then, but also, Nick Saban saying we had 2 quality losses. That, come on, we know that Alabama's based on their wins. They don't talk about their quality losses. And I think this is why the 12-team playoff, it's going to create a ton of interest. And then we know that the number 13 team is going to complain. Why didn't they get in? Really, when we had the BCS, that worked pretty well, except if you were Auburn in 2004. So there's always going to be cases, and that's why college football is such a great game. It's the people that get left out that fuel the controversy. We'll talk more about the college football playoff with Doug Dean, Jimmy Hodge, Rob Brown, right after this quick commercial break.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BBG for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown with Jimmy Hodge, Doug Dean, talking on this Tuesday college football basketball blitz. And Doug making a lot of great points about the college football playoff. 4 teams, now 12 teams. It's going to be earlier than originally forecast. That's because of this season. We've talked a lot about it. You've got, man, you could say, who of the top 4 teams would want to play that 5th team, Alabama? You think Ohio State would with their 66th ranked strength of schedule, or Michigan with their 112th ranked strength of schedule? They're going to find out what real football is about when they play Georgia. I don't see anybody in that group beating Georgia. I think Georgia's on a mission, and I think they're going to repeat. Lawrence Smith's going to better get his writing pen ready because he's going to have to do another book.
Well, I don't know if I heard all of your question, Rob. We'll figure out the technical challenges after the fact. But I think the chalk is for good reason. Georgia looks so complete, so dominant when they come to play in the trenches that you're going to have a lot of the public money, if you're into betting, pouring onto the Georgia Bulldogs. But it's not really a value play. I don't want to slip into being a wagering show, but I'm just making a point. But that is why they play. That is why they play, and I guarantee you, Kirby Smart has seen games that you shouldn't lose occur and get away from you in a one-game elimination. So you can bet he's trying to be very smart about how much does he let them recuperate and rest right now, and then how much does he get physical practice back in the mix, even running the risk of some injury before the big game. But a word to the wise, I don't care if it's Ohio State that's had their troubles in the 4-team playoff, much less Michigan, who at least gave us a look in that game with Ohio State that if you want to play physical, they're happy to oblige. So, and I would be much more shocked, frankly, if TCU made it past the semis. But again, that's why they play. And with the passing attacks these teams have these days, a lot of weird things can happen. But back to my point about posing the, sort of pressure testing with 1 year to look at it that's right in front of our face, what would the 12-team playoff look like? I already mentioned how it would work most likely with Georgia, Michigan, Clemson, and Utah, of all things, getting a first-round bye because they're highest-ranked conference champions. But here would be your first-round games that are played, and they would be at home. You'd have number 12 Tulane at TCU, number 11 Penn State at number 6 Ohio State, number 10 USC Trojans at Alabama. You think you could pack Bryant-Denny for that one? You better believe it. I don't care if there's 100,000. Number 9 K-State at the Vols. Likewise, you could pack that arena. So, and then after that, the teams that are rested up and got the bye match up with them. And I think it's going to be fascinating. And in some ways, you could say Alabama is the poster child, the poster team for why we need a 12-team playoff. But to that, a lot of Auburn people would say Cry Me a River. 2004 is the real poster child for how you get screwed out of opportunity. So I look forward to the 12-team playoff, but it's going to produce some weird early team buys, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that Auburn and Alabama both. I mean that 2004, 2000 right now. Okay, number 5. That's why we're not. It's not going, in my opinion, it's not going to diminish the importance and the significance of the regular season. College football, again, it is so personal. Pro football, you're not embedded with a pro football team like you are a college team. With college, if you went to school there, for 4 or 5 years, whatever, you've got a lot of memories on that campus. You're married to the brick and mortar, to the grass, to your fraternity or sorority, whatever, that stadium, the traditions. And if you're just a fan, the same thing. You are just as married. My mom's an Auburn fanatic. She didn't go to Auburn. She went to Hollins Girls School up in Roanoke, Virginia, learned how to balance a book on her head, but bottom line, that's the difference, college and pro. College is so much more emotional and passionate. And I'm not saying they're not in the NFL, but you don't have those stories like you do that connect you. So 12-team playoff, I think, is just going to grow interest in college football around the country. And we need it. It's going to make us a lot of money. And I hope they take that money and do something with it, because I don't want to see the smaller schools wiped out. I don't believe in socialism, because sooner or later you run out of other people's money to waste. But I'm saying you need to have a way to get some money to these. Now, they've got to show that they're making an effort too. You can't just give them money, but I want to make sure, and I hope that we don't lose Division 1, 2, 3, because college football is the most important game in America.
Well,
Jimmy,
Don, Jimmy, go ahead.
Go ahead, Doug.
No, well, I'm just not crazy about the 4 highest ranked Power 5 conference champions getting the top 4 spots because, I mean, all conferences are not created equal. I mean, the Big 12's only had one team even participate in the college football playoff, and they haven't won a game. The Pac-12 hasn't had a team in the playoffs since 2016. There's a reason for that. The ACC, I mean, in the last 10 years, it's pretty much been a Clemson world, whereas you're penalizing a conference like the SEC that with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, you're probably going to have at least 8 teams in the top 25 for most of the year. And the only reason any of those schools are going to drop out is that they're playing each other. If they were playing these other upper tier teams in these other Power 5 conferences, all of them would be in the top 25 because that's been proven since we've had the BCS and the playoff. So another aspect I do not like about this is we've heard the coaches talk about how they want the most historically relevant bowl games to quote unquote be saved. In other words, preserve the quality of their games. And what's been happening lately is that players at all these big time schools, if they're not in the playoff, are they're leaving early. They're not playing in the game. And if all those games were part of the playoff, in other words, first of all, the top 4 teams, that's, I think, a big enough reward. They're getting a bye. In essence, it's not going to change from the current system for them. It's 5 through 12 that's going to be playing the extra game, but still, though, you use those 4 quarterfinal games to play them at those historical bowl locations that have, just earned their prestige over all these years. And when you do that, though, that's 4 bowl games right there that aren't going to have any players opting out. You're going to have the best players on every team in those bowl games. And I guarantee you the bowl officials in each of those cities are going to be elated about that. And then you have the other 3 games that are going to compose the semifinals and the championship. So those are some changes I would like to see made. But I don't want these weaker conferences that haven't proven themselves under the current system over the last 15 years to be rewarded, just because they're undefeated playing basically a 1 or 2 game schedule and they get into that top 4.
Yeah. And Jimmy, to your point, you've got to have let's call it the bowl venues, at least for the final 4, the semi and the championship game, because otherwise you can't have some semblance of a neutral site where the contest is fair to both teams. And of course, not that you have that with Georgia starting out in the Georgia Dome, but that's the system we've got. I do think the 12-team playoff, to me, it portends, and behind the scenes, I'm sure Sankey and the Big Ten commissioner have in the back of their mind, this would be very compatible with super conferences when college football starts to look like the AFC and the NFC, and you have enough games to play to, essentially match pretty closely what the NFL does.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you this much. The only thing that annoys me more about the way we do the playoff thing, first off, I'm not saying allow these, half-ass conferences to be guaranteed a spot, because that's what the NCAA does with basketball, all those guaranteed conference championships. And let's be honest, they're just roadkill. Okay. They're just there, and out of the 64 teams or 69, what's all this? They keep adding more and more and more participation teams. They get a trophy for that, I guess. But that's where over half the teams in the field are conference champions, and sometimes they're like, okay, they're guaranteed a spot, but they're not always. I don't know. Last year the ACC had 3 of the Elite 8 teams. And a lot of people thought during the regular season this was a historically great season for SEC basketball. Wasn't even close. The SEC was humiliated in the NCAA tournament. But think about that. I mean, your regular season, then you start playing against – look at Auburn, the SEC champion. They were humiliated, embarrassed against Miami, a team that started 4 guards. Jimmy talked a lot about it. Jim Larinaga, whatever. He's been coaching for 45 years. He knows about basketball. Not that Bruce Pearl doesn't, but they beat Auburn by like 20 points with 4 guards. So that's you don't know until you play these games. Y'all are both right, but you can make a strong case that guaranteeing conference champions from crappy conferences a spot is not a smart idea.
Rob, before you get away, I did want to be clear, and I agree with Greg McElroy that heard this morning. I don't have huge fault with the committee on the selections. They followed the metrics and what they've got, especially valuing wins and losses, but they didn't put the 4 best teams in. They put the 4 most deserving teams in based on how it works. And so college football, just the way it fell, if you ask me, is we're going to get cheated out of seeing Alabama and Georgia play, because I think the way Alabama started playing late season would be the biggest threat to Georgia. And you'd have a hard time finding a Georgia fan that wanted Alabama to slip in through the back door this past weekend. Yeah, and I think that people – well, first off, Ohio State backdoored their way in. But the thing about you can say with Alabama in 2011 and 2017, they backdoored their way into the college football, in 2011 to the BCS, in 2017 to the playoff. But in both of those years, Alabama won the damn national championship. Yeah, you can't complain. Can't complain. I mean, they went in there and they did it. And I'm certainly not an apologist or a water boy for Alabama or anybody. I'm harder on Auburn than I am anybody because that's my school. But I think that Northeastern media establishment, Doug, I mean, they're built to carry the water for the Big Ten. Yeah. And Doug, we got a few minutes. Dan Matthews was going to be on with us. He's had to reschedule because he's got to produce. And so we're going to have him back on tomorrow so we can go a little bit longer with you because you're making so many great points, Doug, as you always do. I think Greg McElroy is right if he said that we didn't get the 4 best. We got the 4 most deserving. And yeah, that's a very true statement if you can cut through it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that I don't think we should, when you step back from it, I can hear that gravelly voice of Coach Bryant saying, well, you shouldn't have lost the game. Don't let it get in the hands of the committee. And TCU came close to that, or really Ohio State more so. So, when we went to 4 teams, you're really starting to slice it pretty thin, whining and complaining if you don't make the 4. But, it's going to be, you hear that with bubble teams in March Madness. Oh. Why were we not the 64th team? That's kind of hard to be very sympathetic with. Yeah. Well, and that's, Doug, you watch and they'll start this, who's in. They start all that stuff and they're taken away from the significance of all the regular season games. They can't help themselves. I mean, you watch on TV, these guys, when a great moment happens on a college football game, the announcers really don't need to say anything. Let the camera do the work. And let me interject, and I'd love to get Jimmy's thoughts on this. I do think if they manage it well and we market well at all the big-time schools in the Power 5, this 12-team expansion, if nothing else, you should get way deeper into the season with regular season games being viewed as extremely relevant. You agree, Jimmy?
Yeah, absolutely, because at least you'll have some kind of margin for error because going forward, you could very well see SEC at large teams getting into the playoff with two, maybe three losses because you're going to have so many ranked teams. And, the thing about it is you want to get the 12 best teams, but now with this 14 playoff, and thank the good Lord, we only have one more season of that. But basically, what this told you was that you can't lose more than one game, because you're going to be out. And you look at the two Alabama losses. I mean, their best player was injured, and still had a great year, by the way. But now he's back at 100%. And I doubt that right now, and you mentioned it, Doug, the Georgia fan base, they want no part of Alabama. Not that they can't beat them, but they know that Alabama matches up well against them from a talent standpoint, from a coaching staff standpoint, because of the familiarity. And they're really happy with the way things are gone. Now, this Georgia team's nowhere, in my mind, close to as good as last year's team, but you have all these different intangibles. Their schedule for an SEC team, you couldn't have asked for a much softer schedule.
Hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break, and I don't agree. I think this Georgia team is trying to prove that they're as good or better than last year's team. So we'll talk about that right after this quick commercial break.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959, right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
All right, proud to have Thompson, Haygood, Pierce, Cleveland, and Short as sponsors of Sidelines. They've been the law in Auburn since 1959. 9 attorneys, great support staff. No matter where you live, check them out on the website. They can work with you, cover everything from A to Z on legal matters. You think about something where you need a lawyer, that's who you need to go with. I've known one of the partners, Phil Thompson, for 40 years. I will vouch for him. He is a fantastic attorney. He will represent you and do it right. During the break with Ophelia here, Modine Gunch is in the studio with us as well. Jimmy, I think this Georgia team, in the biggest games they've played this year, they've really shown up, and they have, they've proven themselves. And I think that's something Kirby Smart's using is you're either elite or you're not. And he preaches that. And yeah, they've had some close games against Missouri and Kent State. But other than that, no. Kentucky, but I think this team, the difference with this team is they play to the level of the competition. Doug, you think about that. Jimmy, that's when they get in there against Michigan, against Ohio State, I think they're going to, as Carl said on Sling Blade, I just saw red. I just clean whacked his head off. That's what I think is going to happen. I think what's going to happen when they play Ohio State.
They're going to have 4 weeks to get ready, but they didn't play in a challenging road venue this year. I mean, Missouri wouldn't be considered by anybody to be a really hard place to play. And even the Kentucky game, this was a week after Kentucky had lost to Vandy at home. And yet they played Georgia toe-to-toe for 55 minutes. And they did not play in, like I said, in a really challenging road venue. Like, for example, and I've said this 3 or 4 times, how many of these games would Ohio State have won?
Oh,
Uh,
God.
at Austin, at Fayetteville, at Knoxville, when they were ranked number what, 3, when they had everybody there, at Baton Rouge when LSU was playing their best football all year, at night, and then at Ole Miss 7 days later against an Ole Miss team that had an open date and a coaching staff that had been preparing for you for probably 8 months. They didn't play in any of those venues, and then you get the SEC championship, like everybody's mentioned, at Mercedes-Benz, and then their semifinal games going to be at Mercedes-Benz. I mean, there's a lot of intangibles, that have really fit, nicely for them. And again, you can't compare it to a team, like I said, that had 15 players drafted last year and all those first-round picks defensively. But I think another thing is that most of the teams in the league were not as good as they were last year, too. And you combine that. And, Georgia, no doubt they are the best team out there, but I don't think there is a great team in college football this year. And like, for example, 28-3 lead against Florida. And Florida comes out in the second half. And I mean, they were in a position to just get murdered. And all of a sudden it's 28-20 and we've got a ball game, So I'm just saying that, that just overall quality of the teams is not as good as it was, last year. But at the same time, the competitiveness is. I mean, there are a lot of teams out there that have the ability, to beat the elite teams much more than there used to be because of NIL and the transfer portal. And you're going to see that come into reality much more in future years.
Well,
And
Doug, I think
nobody likes to talk about. Sorry, Rob, if I walked on you. Nobody likes to talk much about an element of how you win a national championship. Obviously, you've got to be elite, but there's an element of luck. You better believe it, lady luck. You need a little of that to get in the game. I think USC in 2004. Sorry to be a homer with my history here, but USC, that was enormous luck. That just the way the voting and the computers and whatever went, and just the media influence, USC did not have to get tested by that undefeated SEC team in the Auburn Tigers. I don't know if Auburn could have beaten that. That was a hell of a USC team. It's a little bit of hubris to suggest that it's an automatic, but college football deserved to see that a lot more than the game we got, which was a wax job on Oklahoma. And then you look at this year, Georgia arguably caught some luck that, hanging on that road trip to Mizzou, that one's still a head scratcher to me. And then, and Georgia caught a major break in Tennessee finding a way through that aerial attack to beat Alabama in dramatic fashion, and the same with LSU, both of which helped Georgia by way of luck to not have to play what might be the team that is best built to possibly beat Georgia.
Well, you know what? You go back and you look at Auburn when they won the national championship in 2010. That 60-minute, track meet with Kentucky up in Lexington, KY. That was you're always going to have games. But I'll tell you what, Jimmy and Doug. Yeah, Vanderbilt beat Kentucky the week before they played Georgia. As anyone who's ever played a sport knows, when you lose to an inferior team, your coaches are not going to ever let you forget it. I bet you that week of practice was awful for Kentucky. They were motivated to play King Kong, barehanded. So they were going to give Georgia their best shot. You got to always think about what's gone on the week before that game to position them. So, yeah, Georgia struggled on the road and they didn't play in the great venues. But I still think this Georgia team, Stetson Bennett going to New York should be just a certainty. Shouldn't even be debatable. But again, I go back and I can't wait to ask Houston Nutt tomorrow when he's on the show with us this question. And I wish Steve Spurrier was on with us, because I've had a number of people text me and say, ask Spurrier why he left Darren McFadden off of his Heisman ballot. I mean, come on. I mean, Tim Tebow is a hell of a player. Darren McFadden, in the last 40 years, you've had Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson, Darren McFadden. Those are the three greatest running backs. I mean, there have been some great ones. Don't get me wrong. Derrick Henry,
Rob,
close to that.
Peyton Manning.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about running backs. Yeah. So, I mean, guys, the bias, and Jimmy, he's pointing it out. Who underachieves more than Penn State? I mean,
since James Franklin's been there, they are 0-13, I believe, against top 10 ranked teams.
And what is Notre Dame's record in the last 25 games against top 5 teams, Jimmy?
Yeah, it's not good, but I didn't hear anybody saying, well, Bill,
0-25.
I think it was Boo Kerrigan, who was the head of the playoff selection committee, talking about what a big win Ohio State had at Penn State. And like I said, a Penn State team is 0-13 under James Franklin against top 10 teams, and that was a Penn State offense that gave Ohio State's defense nothing but problems for pretty much the entire game. Ohio State beat them just because they outscored them.
Yeah,
Georgia is going to disassemble the Buckeyes. I'll be shocked if they're not. Although I will say, then before I dash, guys, I want to mention the yesterday commencement of free agency in college football, the portal. 1,000 kids in the portal. And Hugh Freeze is glad the numbers are the pool is that large, but I just don't see I don't see Georgia getting tested mightily when it's all said and done. But what makes it fun is you've got two opportunities: Ohio State, and you would figure Michigan. The Big Ten gets 2 tests of can they put together a game plan to level the playing field, give themselves a chance to make it a 4-quarter game. I don't think they can. I really don't believe Ohio State can, because of the venue and just the fact that Ohio State showed their vulnerabilities in the trenches against Michigan. But I'm very intrigued with the time to prepare to see if Michigan can make a game of it with Georgia.
Well, we'll see about that. And speaking of the portal, the free market, we talked about it, the correction with Texas A&M and Miami giving out all that NIL money, disastrous seasons. Tell you what I think, what I'm going to be looking for going forward in the portal. We've always had that emotional attachment, the love affair between the fans and the players and their school. Well, I think the fans are getting closer to their school now and less close to the players, because you got a guy that comes to your school for a year, 2, 3 years, and then he leaves and goes somewhere else. He's going to find out when he comes back, trying to hook up with those connections, maybe a job or something like that. A lot of doors won't open anymore. You're going to find that out to be the case. And I know I'm right on that one. I'm rarely wrong.
I'm sure you've noticed you can enter the portal, follow me on this, and then back out of the portal. And what's going on is they're testing I can't blame them. It's the free market capitalism. They're testing the waters on another school coming up with big NIL money.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying the free market, you try doing that in the real world, in the employment world. You're not going to ever succeed. That's why I'm saying the free market will correct this. 18-year-olds don't make the rules. The fans own college football. The people have spoken. They don't like it. I mean, you can use the portal here and there, to plug a hole here and there, but you can't build a program long-term off the portal. It won't. I just don't see it happening. You just like a company, you've got to have people that you can count on. And you got guys going into the portal because their pillow's not soft enough or their mattress was too hard. You know what? They don't need to be playing football anyway. They need to be, taking a knitting class or something. But I think the free market is a lot more powerful. And I know it's easy for people to get on national TV and say, well, this is, college football will never be the same. Yeah, it will. It will be better because we'll cleanse ourselves of this crap.
Yep, I'm gonna have to cut out, guys. When are the semifinals? New Year's Day again?
New Year's
I
Eve.
think they're New Year's
Day.
Eve, and New Year's Eve, because New Year's Day is a Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, New Year. That'll be a fun time, guys. Thanks for having me on the show, and glad to come out of the bullpen for an extended stay.
Hey, look, man, we love it. I hope your arm's not sore there, Lefty. But, hey, I will see you tomorrow in the Magic City, the city that I've never seen a city that comes together for so many great causes. Auburn, Alabama people put everything aside to raise money for great causes like they do in Birmingham. I'm looking forward to being there tomorrow night, Doug.
First
Thank
round
you.
on me. Got to shout out my new LSU friend, the Duff, as I call him. Tough times for Duff. He couldn't even beat Tom Brady last night with his Saints.
He's ready for a change. I saw his Twitter stuff this morning. He's done.
Yeah.
Hey,
by the way, his elite coach needs to bone up on the rules of a field goal attempt just laying on the turf. It can be picked up and run.
Yes, hey, Todd Monken didn't know that either. He was in the press box going, no, don't pick it up. And then when he started running at the midfield, oh, yeah, go.
Just when you think all the rules should be very straightforward, no, they're not really. See you guys.
No. All right. Take care, Doug. All right, Doug, riding around Birmingham with Mildred in the front seat. What a great way to start your day. Jimmy, how does Todd Monken not know that rule? I mean, every now and then you'll see it in the NFL where there's a ball kicked into the end zone and everybody's standing around, and one of those guys that runs a 9.500 will pick it up and just be gone. And it's a lot of fun to see that, but just you talk about it a lot. Field awareness, game awareness in basketball. I mean, you see guys calling timeouts at the end of a game where it's tied in a national championship, calling a timeout and forgetting that their team doesn't have any timeouts. Man.
Yeah, well, you have to communicate all of that during the timeouts on the sideline, especially, if the outcome of the game is on the line, and you have to be aware if you have the ability to stop the clock, if you can't get out of bounds, or in college football, if you gained enough yardage to make a first down so that they stop the clock until the chains get moved, and then you can immediately spike it to save time. But but in reality, though, in college football, when it comes down to the coaching staffs, the one guy that needs to know it and communicate it to his players is obviously the special teams coach. And obviously that didn't happen at LSU. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, they I guess thought it was an extra point, but there was only one player on the field that knew, and that was the Georgia guy that picked it up. It goes, I think I'm going to see what happens here. And the key was the whistle never blew. And that is one thing that coaches need to portray to their players on every play of a game, that you keep going until you hear the whistle blow. If you don't hear a whistle blow, you keep playing. And that's the best, I think, rule of thumb to use anytime there's an unusual play that takes place, and there seems to be confusion not only among the players, but the coaching staff and the fans watching.
Yeah, and that is just free money. I mean, that's low-hanging fruit, and you've got to have your guys. That's why there's so little time spent as opposed to what should be spent on coaching special teams. But you talk to there's a guy who's a field goal kicker for the University of Memphis that's doing rehab in the pool when Audrey and I are swimming. And he's from Florida. He's a really good kicker. And he talks about it. Special teams. It's almost like, they put you out to pasture, like you've got leprosy or something. But it's a third of every game. That's what gets me is, wow, you can win Look at Bobby Bowden. How many national championships did wide right cost him? Let's take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back with a lot more to go on hour number 2 Sidelines.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back here with you in the Red River Ford Toyota, Wynne, Arkansas, open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m., 6 p.m., 45 minutes from Memphis. Easy to get to. Just go on I-40, go north at the Far City exit, about 15 minutes. Easy to get to. They deliver anywhere. Trade-in values on used cars, real strong. Also, service department open Saturday mornings, 7 a.m. till 12:30. So we got a lot of ground to cover today. This is a lot of fun talking about these college playoffs, the portal. Free agency. That's what it is. It opened back up yesterday. And I think the market will correct all this stuff. You know, we go back and we think about rules changes, things that happen. You know, when we first started playing college football, Jimmy, am I correct? I need to ask my dad because I think he was there. November 6th, 1869. Rutgers 6, Princeton 4. I believe there were 25 football players on each team. Jimmy, wasn't that right? About 50. That's where the term rugby scrum came from. Now, I'm sure we got that from rugby, but we've had rules changes. Early 1900, I think it was 1906, the governor of Georgia convened a special session of the legislature. Okay? Not like they hadn't done that lately. But anyway, I digress. Because 19 players had died in college football games. And a Georgia player lost his life, and they were going to get rid of football. And the player's mother spoke on the floor of the Georgia State House and pleaded and said, my son would want you to continue playing football. And they made rules. And that's when Teddy Roosevelt, the Rough Rider, founded the NCAA. And it's just, we have been through, you know, peaks and valleys many times before. And I wish everybody would quit saying, you know, that this is it and it's the worst. You don't know what you're talking about. We have been here before. This is simply shaping tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. We will work this stuff out. The game of college football, the product on the field, it is as good as it's as entertaining as it's ever been. But don't tell me 40, 50 years ago it was a better. It was not. The crowds today are bigger, hands down. The interest, the TV ratings are ginormous. So look, people, I mean, look ahead. We're going to go to this 12-team playoff. Yeah, you can say there'll be some teams that are in there that aren't worthy. Well, they're in there, and you look at the excitement. Look at the excitement of the NCAA basketball tournament. 1979, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Indiana State, Michigan State, Dick Enberg. That, to me, is what got us all hooked. And it's been every year, March Madness. It's a copyrighted term. It's a product. It just gets more interesting. And 357 teams are eligible to make the tournament. And we're going to talk with John Brady, former basketball coach at Samford, LSU, and Arkansas State about that. And Jimmy, didn't used to be nearly as many teams, did there?
No, I mean, again, you didn't have the TV coverage back then. And what really put the NCAA tournament into a different stratosphere was when CBS took over the contract for the NCAA tournament. And in '82, the first year they held the tournament, you had the famous championship game between Georgetown and North Carolina, and Michael Jordan made the famous shot. And of course, Patrick Ewing was a freshman, and he was a dominant player even as a true freshman. And the game started with him having, I think, 6 consecutive goaltending calls to try to intimidate the Carolina players. And it was one of the greatest games in NCAA history. And CBS just put the game at a totally different level. They handled all the coverage of the early round games, whereas back when NBC covered the games, ESPN was carrying the early round games. So CBS put it under one umbrella, and then that is now expanded to TNT and TBS, covering every single game of the tournament now with those venues. So it's just been a great growth, but it really started when CBS took over the tournament 40 years ago.
Yeah, Jimmy, and before we go, Yancy Porter should be joining us here in just a minute. Greatest combo. Dickenberg was great. Al McGuire, Billy Packer. Is that your favorite? Who's your favorite? I know who your favorite is. You tell me, but I bet I know who your favorite is. You may not admit it, though.
Well, my favorite announcing team, though it wasn't at the national level, was Jim Thacker and Billy Packer on the ACC regional telecast. They were absolutely tremendous. But when it comes to national, it started with, Brent Musburger, and then Billy Packer, and then Jim Nantz took over. I think Billy Packer was a great analyst, but honestly, I personally think Jay Billis is the best college basketball analyst that we've had.
Yeah, he is so. Hey, Jimmy, you think we ought to get him on this show?
Well, like I said,
he's good.
I think
he's good.
He's accessible probably, but again, though, he reminds me a lot of Herb Street, and that as soon as something happens, most people don't realize what happened, and he's all over it, and they do a replay to explain what he's thinking, which makes it so effective.
Yeah, I love that. Yancy Porter, Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Rebel Yell Hotline, Monday night, 6 p.m. Central, Sports 56, WHBQ, Super Talk, Mississippi. Yeah! Yancy, how are you?
What's going on, guys?
Well, we're talking about the symphony. Jimmy's talking about the opera, and it's Audrey's birthday. Hello, Audrey. Happy birthday, Audrey. 39 years old today.
There we go.
But look, hey, let's talk about Ole Miss. I tell you what, I was at the office Christmas party last night at the Moose Lodge out on the highway, and talking about Lane Kiffin. A lot of talk about him. I think this guy is a great quarterback coach. I think he's a great play caller, and I think something's going on with him that's making him dig his heels in. I think he wants to be at Ole Miss. I know we talked about the Auburn situation and all like that, but now he's going to need to mend some fences with some of the Ole Miss fans. What do you recommend that he do other than just win?
Well, I mean, it always helps to say the right things, right? So, it's just actions speak louder than words, though, in the end. He needs to win games, as you just mentioned, but Just show the community that he really wants to be here. And look, he's had his chances to leave. He is not. This is the new world that we live in. This is not back in the 70s and 80s eras that we grew up in. So, just get used to it. This is the way it is. There's a lot of money involved now. It's a different world.
Yeah, it is. And, you think back to the 70s, think about Archie Bunker and Edith. Those were the days. God, I mean, she couldn't sing for her life, but I think about that. And it has changed a lot. And we always think this is it. It's ruined. It's not going to be the same. I mean, there's a point to where the money will kind of kick back. I mean, there'll be enough kickback to where salaries will peak out, but they'll still make a lot of money. But I look at Lane Kiffin now. We got December signing date coming up, December 21st. It's going to be here. I mean, you're talking 2 weeks from tomorrow. Where do the Rebels stand? It looked like they may be 4 or 5 of the top 6 players in Mississippi coming to Oxford. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, I think they're going to add about 3 more, possibly 4 more high school players to their 12-man class. And they're going to fill it out with the portal. They're not going to go huge like they did last year where they signed 17 guys out of the portal. I think, they're going to go 10 to 12. We all know the positions that they got to get some depth and add to, linebacker particularly. Still seeing what's going to happen with Michael Trigg there at tight end, regardless if he stays on the team or not. They got to add to that position, and they got to get a couple game breakers there at receiver. Jonathan Mingo has already declared he's going to play in the Senior Bowl, so he's gone. Then they most definitely need to add a couple studs in the trenches, but it's so hard. There's just really not many guys, although you did see Alabama's everyday starter there that had not given up a starter go into the portal, just crazy. Again, today's era is just different, but there are not too many guys in the trenches that are really, truly difference makers that you see in the portal. What you see in the portal are a lot of quarterbacks because only one can play and a lot of skilled guys. But the line of scrimmage really is hard to get those impact players in the portal. So you better be developing those guys from the high school ranks.
Yeah, especially offensive linemen and defensive linemen. You're right, but especially offensive linemen. That's the hardest. That's why you have more 4th year and fifth year seniors, because it takes time to develop the guys. Hard position, and then so on skill players. Receivers are the divas now. Used to be running backs were so highly valued, and I think I look at the high water mark for running backs was Trent Richardson being the number 4 pick in the April 2012 draft of the Indianapolis Colts. And you haven't really seen since then too many running backs, Ezekiel Elliott from Ohio State, but they've taken that position and devalued it, Yancy. But the most valued position on offense, it seems like, is now receiver or left tackle. But we get away from the issue of linemen. They're so hard to find. Jimmy and I talked with you about it. You look at all these great offensive linemen. A lot of them are training guys. Willie Anderson, Hall of Famer up in Atlanta, played at Auburn, played for the Bengals. I think started more games than anybody in their history. Maybe one day he's going to be in the NFL Hall of Fame. But, man, that guy's a great lineman. But it's still, how many first-team All-American offensive linemen did the SEC produce this year, Yancy?
Well, let me put it this way. Last year, Ole Miss signed the number 1 portal offensive lineman in the 22 class, in Mason Brooks, and he got beat out by 2 redshirt freshmen. So, it's different. The line of scrimmage, the schools put a lot of value. Now, I know you have Alabama's offensive lineman, and Jimmy can tell you a little bit more about that, why he would decide to go in a portal. But those are your exceptions. There's not too many of those guys floating around in the portal. So the portal, you can get just about anywhere but linemen. The linemen are just really difficult. You can get a few defensive linemen, but not many. I mean, there's really not many guys that you have a hard time fitting through the door that are truly impact players. Now, there might be a lot of players that all the big time schools are going after, and you think they're good and they're built up to be all this, but they're really not.
Yeah, it's a very, very tough to get them. And I'm just looking at it. You go back, that class that came in August of 21 at Alabama, highly regarded, got the Brockemeyer brothers from Fort Worth, Trinity, Episcopal, haven't found their way onto the field that I know of. And wow, I don't know what that was. Got an alien in the room. But anyway, Jimmy, I look at offensive linemen and I just shake my head. And I'm like, where are we going to find them? I mean, I think it's the 7-on-7 hurry up, no huddles that have led to the demise of offensive linemen. And they're just, we don't have them. Where name me the best offensive lineman in America. Usually that's a household name.
I don't really think about the draft usually and who's considered the top picks unless every week a certain team is on and you hear the announcers mention that they're projected as the number 1 or number 2 player, at that position. It's just, you notice offensive linemen when they're not getting the job done, especially in short yardage
You're right, Jimmy.
situations, or if your quarterback is running for his life a lot, like Bryce Young was against Tennessee, and on numerous occasions against Auburn last year in the Iron Bowl and against Georgia in the national championship game. But I think what you're going to see, though, going forward is a lot of these linemen are going to come from other Division I group of 5 schools that have showed, even though they may have been overlooked as high school players, they've showed that they can play at the college level, and they have they have the ability to be developed into a very effective player. Like, for example, Steen, who started at left tackle for Alabama this year, had started 30-something games at Vandy, and he came right in and has started every game this year. And the only guy out of that ballyhooed Alabama offensive line recruiting class from 2 years ago that's played at all has been Latham. And other than that, none of those guys have played at all. And one of the Brockemeyers announced yesterday that he's going into the portal. And there's probably 10 Alabama offensive linemen that may be going, because even though it's a big disappointment to these players, at every school, Power 5 school, they're having discussions with their coaching staffs, and they're not confrontational. They're amicable, and they're realistic. And in many cases, a lot of these coaching staffs will help these players through the connections these coaches have at other schools to find a spot to play, because that's the bottom line. These guys just want to play.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're going to take a break here, and we're going to come back. We're going to get into it with Yancy, talking about a prediction that you made, and you saw this one coming in the preseason. You said one day when they write the book and they ask Nick Saban, who's the one player you wish you'd have signed but you let get away? And that's another reason. Brian Harsin told him he was waiting on somebody else. The kid lives 35 minutes from Auburn's campus. Quinshon Judkins. What did he do his freshman year? Well, stay tuned after this quick commercial break. Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline in Oxford, Mississippi. Hattiesburg, boy, man, you got to love him. He's going to talk about it because state of Alabama is loaded again. Right after this.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959 right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
Okay, Rob Brown here with you. Remember, just a little housekeeping notes. Please turn off your ringers and fasten your seatbelts during the show before you walk around the cabin. But anyway, Yancy, the lack of offensive linemen, it's everywhere. But you know what? That's why we've got all these mobile quarterbacks that run because they have to. If you are a big blundering quarterback back there running a 5.4 40, you're a dead man walking. And I mean, you go back and you look at what happens, like that Alabama class, that was regarded as the best class of offensive linemen maybe they'd ever signed. And J.C. Latham, that's it. And you talk about Ole Miss gets the number one offensive lineman in the portal, and he gets beat out by two redshirt freshmen. We're not developing offensive linemen, and nobody's talking about it. But that's why you've got guys like Patrick Mahomes are superstars. Yeah, it's called I got to run for my life because I have to. I don't have any choice.
Yeah. Well, if you look at like Alabama, and Jimmy knows this better than I about Alabama's roster, but their two most productive players came from where? Vandy and Georgia Tech, right? Smaller Power 5 schools, and then a lot of G5 schools are the ones putting out players. Fans get too caught up into, oh, he came from Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, and he was a 5-star coming out of high school. Well, guess what? In his 3 years at Alabama, just using them hypothetical, he had 22 catches for 380 yards. So the rankings really don't matter in high school. You got to look at the production in college, and that's what Lane is really honed in on is most of their guys they're signing come from G5 schools or smaller Power 5 schools. They're not coming from Alabama and Georgia, and they were former 5-star guys. These are guys that were, developed in college and came in with a chip on their shoulder and continued to develop. Those are the guys you're seeing not only at Ole Miss, but all over the country that are really making an impact from the portal. Now, quarterback's different deal because those guys, there's only one that plays, and you do get a lot of stars in the making, like we saw with Ohio State's quarterback that went to LSU and won a national championship, and we could go on down the line, right? So that's the exception. But really in the portals, the guys that are producing are the guys that come from smaller schools.
Yeah, well, I asked this to Jim Nagy, executive director of the Reese's Mobile Senior Bowl last year. I said, hey, where are the offensive linemen coming from? He said that. It's coming from the FCS schools, North Dakota State, places like that, Northern Iowa. Because you know what? Those guys go there. They're legitimately student athletes, and they're willing to develop and take the time to work with the coaches, and they'll do it. So that's where the offensive linemen are coming from. Nobody wants to play offensive line. Jimmy's talked about it. Being a big guy now, it's kind of frowned upon. Looking like Fatty Arbuckle when you're in 5th grade, Minnesota Fats. Nobody wants to be like that. Got plenty of them. Look at all the people riding around on golf carts and scooters in Walmart. But anyway, I digress. But I don't see too many of them playing offensive line. But it's a big deal, guys. I mean, we're not developing them. And Art Kehoe told my friend Coach E years ago, he said, going forward, the wide receiver position, these will be the divas in football, college and pro. I mean, Chad, what's that guy? What's his real name? Number 85. Yeah, but he's got a real name. What's his last name? What? Yeah, Chad. Yeah, I don't recognize that goofy. Oh, that's ridiculous. Chad Johnson. Okay, look at Odell Beckham Jr. Look at all these guys. It's all about them. I mean, who needs them? Get rid of them. I mean, look, they're ruining locker rooms. Who's the one that threw the temper tantrum? Antonio Brown. That guy needs to be in the nervous hospital, man. He needs help. Remember?
That's CTE. That Cincinnati hit in the playoffs. He's never been the same. So I kind of sadly give him a pass because I think that's just classic syndrome of CTE right there.
Well, yeah, okay, but I'm just saying that
But
we've
yeah,
let the
I get what you're saying. Terrell Owens, a bunch of them, a lot of divas from the wide receivers that were sent years ago. But let's be honest, those are the guys that tilt the field in the NFL. And the running backs get beat on so hard, after a year or two, they're done. Whereas receivers in the NFL can go 6, 8, some even up to 10 years of being productive. So that's why they become divas, is because, quite frankly, they're a lot more valuable.
Well, they got more time. A running back might last 4 years. And
right now in college, that's different because running backs haven't used up everything yet, right? But in the pros, it's just such a violent game. They're getting beat on so hard that, even great pro running backs, they're effective for 2 or 3 years and they're done.
Yeah,
whereas receivers can go longer. So that kind of developed the attitude from the professional athletes that seek down to college. But you've seen the passing game become so prevalent in the college that receivers have become more valuable than running backs for the most part in college. So it's just the transformation of the game of football.
Yeah, it is a wild, and as Yordanovich on Saturday Night Live said, we are two wild and crazy guys. That's what's happened with the wide receiver position. It has just become, to me, the diva position. And I know you got to have those guys, but man, as a coach, they're narcissists. And again, you get what you allow, and we've allowed them to contaminate pro football. And in college football, if I'm a running back and I'm a junior and I'm on fire, I'm out of there. I don't know how you really can't come back because your shelf life might be 3 or 4 years in the NFL. You got to make as much money as you can. So when you're 25 or 26, you better have managed that money well. And you got to tell all your hangers on, that it's not your job to take care of them. You want to buy your mom a car or a house or a lifetime Netflix subscription, go for it. Financial literacy. That's the big thing with a lot of those guys. I've been watching this stuff develop, lack of offensive linemen, what it's done to the running game. I mean, who's the leading running team, Jimmy, in the country this year in college football? Who's got that other than the service academies, because that's what they do. They run the wishbone or whatever. Who out there has a great running game? And I'm talking about in the biggest stages. I look at the 3 or 4 biggest games. Do they produce a lot of yards on the ground? Who is it?
Well, it just varies. I mean, and certain conferences, you don't have that many big games. I mean, like in the, Big Ten, I mean, you got Michigan, Ohio State basically play a 2-game schedule. So, it's kind of hard to tell, except Michigan the last 2 years, their ability to run the football against Ohio State's really been the difference. And they've controlled the line of scrimmage. But, it just depends. I mean, depending on what conference you're in. And also lots of times certain conferences get a lot more coverage than other conferences. That's why these NFL drafts surprise a lot of people, because you get players picked very high that are in some cases not even in Division I, but in most cases, if you hadn't heard of a Division I player, they're in the group of 5 conferences.
Yeah. It's Yancy. It's difficult. I look now. Okay. I got a few more minutes before we go to Coach John Brady, but Yancy, you talk about the use of the portal with Lane Kiffin. They lost 4 of the last 5 games. What was the biggest factor, other than we know about the distraction with Lane Kiffin looking, or being pursued? Whatever happened. But if that wasn't going on, what were the problems that got Ole Miss? It was a back-end loaded schedule. We know that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the Alabama factor, right? They usually say you lose to Bama in a heartbreaking game. You lose that next game. Well, Ole Miss lost the next 2 after that. So, they let 1 loss turn into 3 losses. Lane put so much into that Bama game, and getting to Atlanta, and when you into the playoffs. And so when you lost that Bama game, all the goals are gone. You can't get to the playoffs. You lost to Bama, and I think they put a little too much emphasis on that Bama game and getting to the playoffs, and there just really was not a whole lot left to play for after that Alabama game. The way that he preaches, the only thing that matters in our program is making the playoffs and beating Bama, so maybe he's got to change that a little bit. And then I think, I think some depth issues occurred at the end of the season. We saw rear its ugly head at some positions there where, they were kind of hidden a little bit at the beginning of the season until some injuries started piling on. And that's when it always pops up, right? It's at the end of the season. So the depth issues started popping up, and I think that got them too.
Yeah. Well, bottom line, man, Lane Kiffin looks like he's going to be there for a while. Maybe, I don't think he wants to go through this every year. And if you're an Ole Miss fan, you got to love his kids. I think they're a big reason why he stayed in Oxford. And I think he fits in. He loves being there. He's the man, and it's going to be fun to watch. Just the SEC gets the best coaches for a lot of reasons. Yancy, look, tell people how they can follow you. I know you are at work, but you do great work on the Rebel Yell hotline.
Yeah, just as at Yancy Porter on Twitter, and then on the Rebel Yell hotline, you just simply go to local Super Talk or WHBQ station. That's it.
All right, look, man, let's talk again here later in the week. We got a lot going on in college football, and so give me real quick. I got one last question. I got to ask you this. Okay. Alabama being left out of the playoff, Ohio State sneaking in. You agree or disagree with what happened there?
I don't think it's Ohio State. I think it's TCU. We all know Alabama's a better team than TCU. They would have been favored by 7 to 10 points on a neutral field. But that's not the way that it goes, right? You have to do it on your resume. And I guess TCU did have a little bit better resume, but we all know Alabama's one of the top 4 teams.
Yeah, obvious. Okay. I just wanted to ask you that one just to hear you say this. But Yancy, thank you. Have a great day. Always love it when you tell us to have a blessed day. I'm going to beat you to the punch. You have a blessed day and go bless others, okay?
God bless. Y'all take care.
You bet. Thanks so much. Always love having Yancy on here. Jimmy, we're not saying because we got to get Rodney Orr back on. We're having issues with his communication system where we can have him on the StreamYard on our new system on the show. We'll get that worked out. Love Rodney Orr, Gary Harris. Rodney knows recruiting. 26 years, Tider Insider. It's only $48 a year. Does a great job of, chronicling what goes on there. But, man, that's tough to have so many big-time recruits come in, and it's J.C. Latham. And then you talk about Steen coming in from Vanderbilt. He comes in and starts every game. But let's put things in perspective. Everybody's acting like that Alabama's down and all. They lost 2 games on the last play. They could have lost 4 or 5. That's how important Bryce Young is. So that's because they have such a high standard. And because of that, they ain't going to slip. And that's 15 straight years for Alabama with double-digit wins. Here's my question. Does Bryce Young get in? Yeah, of course he gets invited to New York. He's a Heisman winner. He'll be there in the crowd. I just answered my own question. Anyway, Coach John Brady.
No, well, he's not going to be there. The 4 have been announced.
Okay. Well, but Bryce, but as a previous winner, he gets to go. See, that's the thing. But anyway, Coach John Brady is on with us right now. As I mentioned earlier, longtime coach of the Samford Bulldogs. I was at my manager's last night for the office Christmas party. Whit Thompson and his wife Katie, both Samford graduates. A lot of people. We had Martin Newton on the show with us last spring during basketball season, and Bucky McMillan went from Mountain Brook about a mile down the street to Samford. But Samford, LSU, Arkansas State. Frank Duffy made the connection. Thank you, Frank Duffy. Go Tigers. Love having you on because it means basketball season. I'm fired up about talking college basketball, and we call it the College Football and Basketball Blitz Tuesday, every day of the week. Thank you, Coach, for taking time to come on here with us. And Let's talk some college basketball as you see it, because you've been to the Final Four as a coach and you figured out how to use that link. I knew you could. You're very smart.
y'all gone big time on me, man. We got pictures and live broadcasts. Holy me, I have to get my makeup on next time. Make me look better.
No, you look great. I'll tell you what, man. Hearing your voice reminds me of how much fun we had last spring going through that run, college basketball. And this year we're getting an earlier start. But as a coach, and you will always be a coach from Brookhaven or Macomb, Mississippi. Which one?
Macomb, man. Come on. Brookhaven.
You're okay. That's right, Macomb. Yeah. All right. So when you were in high school in 1977, you were young, and okay. So you remember? I mean, we all remember the night October 20th when Skinner's plane went down in Gillsburg, Mississippi. So you're from right near there. So you've been a coach though, and you will be coach forever. What right now do you do? This first month, it's almost like college football. We know it is. It's so big, but man, the interest. I'm looking around the SEC. The interest is there, and I want to start first off with what's going on at LSU. You're there in Baton Rouge. They've got a new coach, a lot of changes. He came in from Murray State. So he's won everywhere. Why isn't he going to win at LSU? He will, I think.
Well, he will. With this transfer portal, I think it's changed the whole landscape of college basketball. Everybody checked out of LSU. We've got 10 new players, 3 players back. Only 2 of them played a year ago. Adam Miller, who is our leading scorer, didn't even play a year ago because he tore up his knee. So 10 new players, only 2 that played. We're in a transition period, but our schedule has been conducive to where the team is. There's some teams on our schedule that are good teams, but not great teams. But if LSU plays well, they're going to win, and they've done that to this point. The only team that we've played that gives the feel of an SEC team would be Kansas State. They beat us by 1 point or 2 points down in the Caymans in the championship of that tournament. So I think our team is on line and progressing as it should. Saturday we go to Atlanta and play Wake Forest, and
hold that thought, Coach. I mean, the time the stopwatch is hit. We got to take a quick commercial break because I want to hear about this one. You've been roughing it in the Caymans, huh? Tough place to be. We'll be right back with Coach John Brady and Jimmy Hodge after this.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back with Coach John Brady. Jimmy Hodge, we're broadcasting live. Red River Ford Toyota, Wynne, Arkansas. Open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Check them out on the web, redriverfordtoyota.com. Coach Brady, you're talking about LSU going to play Wake Forest. That's going to be a fun matchup.
Yeah, that's going to be the first real big test for us. Steve Forbes does a great job. They had a big win. I think they went to Wisconsin and won the other day. And anytime you stroll up there and win a game, your team's got to have a competitive nature with it and have to have some talent as well. So I think it's a triple header in Atlanta, and we're one of the 3 games, and we're going to play Wake Forest. So that'll be a test of where we are. And then we come back for a couple of games before we start SEC play that we should win, provided we play, pretty good. But then our SEC schedule, we open up at Rupp Arena, and then we've got our first 5 or 6 games in league play are just brutal. So it's going to be survival after the first 6 or 7 SEC games. And then the schedule kind of tips our way, if there's such a thing in the SEC. But we've got to survive those first 5 or 6 games in league play because they're going to be real challenging.
Yeah, and you look around the conference right now. Tennessee, I think, is the highest ranked team. Alabama, Nate Oates, they're up there in the top 10. Auburn pushing there at 12 or 11, depending on the poll you look at. Arkansas with Eric Musselman. In between, being a professional kick fighter in post-game tournaments in Hawaii. Hey, I tell you what, that coach, I got to ask you because I'm over here surrounded by Razorbacks. And Sonny Smith, in the fall of 2019, he comes on our show a lot, and he said, I'm going to tell you something. Keep your eye on Bill Musselman's son, Eric Musselman, the new coach at Arkansas. He goes, he will get them winning big in a hurry. He's one of my favorite coaches. We got a lot of guys in our hunting camp whose kids are in school at Arkansas, and they say he's everywhere on campus, everywhere promoting that program. I love the guy. Do you know him?
I've met him, when I was at LSU.
Yeah.
He came and visited one of our practices because John Treloar was my assistant, and they had coached against each other in the CBA. And he came down to see Treloar one weekend and came to a couple of our practices. But I don't know him well, but I do know the job that he's done and have recognized the job that he's done at Arkansas. They're extremely talented. And, early on they may have lost a game, but with so many new players, the transfer portal, I think every team in the league has an average of 7 or 8 new players. LSU has 10. And I think it's just going to take a little bit more time now to build a team and get those guys playing together. You can't rush that. And it happens when it just happens. And a lot of times you have to play and practice and go through some games and find who your best players are and the chemistry that it takes to be successful at a high level.
Well, it's like test driving a new car or truck, you're going to take it around and get them to come together. One more question. The SEC as a league last year, and I referenced this earlier in the show, people said it last year, it was historically, a great year, but not so much when we got to the NCAA tournament. The ACC ended up with 3 of the Elite 8 teams. With what we lost as a league from last season, what's coming back this year, be it high school recruiting, potential one and dones in the portal, how strong will the SEC be this year compared to, say, the ACC?
Well, it's hard to say. I think both leagues have taken some hits early on in games. But then I go back to what I just referenced to. It's going to take some of these teams some time to find and learn one another and build the necessary chemistry and camaraderie. Alabama is extremely talented. I think that Miller, he may be one of the best players in the country. And it's just going to take them a little while to find out who they are. They've had a big win, and then they've had some disappointing games where they haven't won as much as you may have thought they should have. Arkansas's in that. And Kentucky, I'm still trying to see if Kentucky has a good enough point guard to make them an elite team. But I like Tennessee. I think Tennessee has experience. I think they're well coached, and we'll see how it plays out. But I think right now there are about 4, possibly 5 teams in the league that I think could play at the elite status. Then I think there's some that are bundled up. The team with the record that has surprised me has been Missouri. Now, I'm not as familiar with who they've played and who they've beaten, but certainly what they've done early with a new coach has been impressive.
Yeah, it is. And the interest is getting – what I'm noticing, Coach, is the interest is picking up earlier with football still going on for college basketball. And I've always said when the fans get as mad as they do about losing a football game at LSU or Auburn or Arkansas, that's when the basketball program gets to be really good. Jimmy Hodge jumping here with the coach, John Brady. And John Brady, I bet you've been to Cherry Valley, Arkansas before. I guarantee.
I've been to a lot of
Cherry
towns
Valley,
in Arkansas, but I don't know if I've been to Cherry Valley.
It's on.
Hello.
On the guarantee you've been through it.
I have. Where is it? Tell me.
Well, when you were in the borough at Arkansas,
Right.
TS House Industries is. I just figured you'd been recruiting. You probably know every small town in Arkansas.
Well, now, if someone knows every small town in Arkansas, they know something, man. I'm gonna tell you, there's a bunch of them.
You're right. You're right. No, but anyway, hey, but let me.
We're cutting in and out a little bit.
Yeah, we love having you on here because you know your basketball, Jimmy.
Yeah, I can't pick you up, Rob. The signal's frozen.
Yeah,
the signal is kind of stopping, and so I don't know what's happened to it. I can hear you, Coach, and I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I cannot pick up Rob.
I got you. I'm good with you.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens, or maybe he can pick it up. But hey, what I wanted to ask you though was that, during these first 2 months until you get to conference play, and I know some leagues have actually already played a conference game. The ACC's played a conference game. But what is your goal for the first 4 or 5 weeks? It's obviously to try to find who your best combinations are going to be, how many players are actually going to be in your rotation by the time the conference season gets into full swing. Are those your 2 major goals in addition to trying to win every game and get better? But how has it changed in recent years compared to back, when you were coaching?
Well, there's a couple of things there. That's a wide range question there, but I think depending on where your team is, when I was there and we had an experienced team coming back, I tried to play a more challenging schedule. If we lost some seniors and some guys went professional, I would try to scale the schedule back based on the team I foresaw coming in. Now, with the transfer portal now, I'm not sure how you approach that. I know Matt McMahon, we have 10 new players, only 2 back that played last year. Our schedule is conducive to watching this team develop. And to your point, he doesn't know who to play because he'd never worked them out. Some of these teams are having transfers come in the summertime, and you haven't had any spring workout with them or watched them play. So what Matt has done the first couple of games, he played 11 players in the first half alone. I told him I've gone 2 games and never played 11 players, when I was working it. But I think that's what you have to do now. Get some games that you can win early and play a lot of people, experience winning, and also recognizing what you need to do better in order to build the type of, and I keep referring to camaraderie that the championship team needs. So I think, but the rule of thumb with me, the more experience I had coming back, the tougher the schedule I tried to build. If I didn't have the experience and had a lot of new players and young players, I didn't try to play as many tough teams as I would have if I had a different type of team. So, but with the transfer portal, I think it's harder now to predict who's going to be good because you haven't seen those guys play together, and neither has the coach. So I think it's always going to be, to a degree, a work in progress with the way the rosters change these days.
Yeah. Coach, when you look at the SEC versus Big Ten, or we have the SEC Big 12 challenge, I think we're about to go to an SEC ACC challenge. Are you in favor of those type of challenges during the regular season? Because I think they're great because you get a better feel for how good you really are versus just strictly postseason.
Yeah, the SEC does theirs in season, and looks like the ACC, they're doing theirs in preseason, and I don't know how the SEC is going to structure that with the ACC, but I like them. I think it generates some cross section play. I think the fans take a huge interest in it. I think it's good for fans to compare whose league is better based on how those games turn out, and I think it just adds more to the college basketball discussion. If they weren't playing those games. So I've always been in favor with those.
All right. Next question. Auburn's going to take a West Coast trip, play Southern Cal and at Washington. watching Bruce Pearl's teams as you have, being in the SEC, color commentator on the LSU Basketball Network, what do you expect Auburn to encounter out there that they may not typically see in the SEC night in and night out?
Well, I think just rule of thumb, if I'm going to talk about, I think the speed and the quickness of the SEC and the Auburn team will be a little bit better than what they're facing. I think that maybe the West Coast, to a degree, isn't as physical possibly as the SEC will be, and it'll be an interesting trip for his team. I don't think Bruce Pearl does anything without thinking it through and planning it, and there's a reason why he's going out that way. Maybe to see a different style, maybe to see some different type of players, a different way other coaches coach, and let his team experience as much as they can before they hit the SEC.
I think that's a great take. And then you watch, Jimmy always talks about staying up late at night watching Bill Walton talk about the Conference of Champions. Well, it's going to be different when Southern Cal and UCLA leave. But as a basketball analyst, how do you rate Bill Walton? Because you're a basketball analyst, color analyst, and you really know the sport. God, Coach, you technically, just listening to you wax eloquently about what's going on, and I think that take you just gave, Bruce Pearl doesn't do anything without planning it through. I agree with you, but talk about Bill Walton as an analyst. I want Jimmy listen to Coach.
Well, Bill Walton and I are two completely different cats now. I mean, you're talking about a guy who grew up in a whole different limelight than from Macomb, Mississippi, and doing and staying. I've always been a Southern guy, and you're looking at a guy who thinks differently than possibly I do, who sees his role as a commentator different than I see mine, and he's all over the board. And I think with Bill Walton, some people like him, and some people can't stand to listen to him, and I think that's what drives him. He doesn't care, but if you've got to respect Bill Walton by what he's doing, because at least he's being who Bill Walton is, and he's not trying to trick anybody or be anything different than Bill Walton. And when you put him on TV, you've got to know he's going to go from A to Z in a short period of time and cover a bunch of topics that may not be related to basketball at all.
Yeah, and I think he spends a lot of time at Red Rocks, wearing the dead shirt and, lighting up the Turkish water pipe, having a good time. Yeah, he has a good time. Jimmy, you just heard it from the coach.
Well, I think his critics would say that the subjects he includes during a game don't include basketball, which is the big problem. And he talks, have you been to Monongahela Falls? And we were there this afternoon. It was such an incredibly exhilarating sight. And oh golly, and after about 3 or 4 minutes, he drives Seth Greenberg crazy. You mentioned Bill Walton to Seth Greenberg. He's just no.
Bill's talking about those. He's talking about those type of things. There's 2 or 3 baskets have been made, and he's talking about something else.
It was like, Harry Carey, Cubs guys. Man, did Skip and I, did we paint the town red last night? Grand slam, and then or a triple play, But I tell you though, when you look at these different commentators, we lost. Coach Brady's back.
My phone was ringing. I don't know what.
I got you. Well, understood. But anyway, when you see these commentators, and over the years, I've always wondered why, if you're a young player, it seems like they don't pay that much attention to what a former coach or a basketball expert is explaining in regard to what's happening during the game and how certain fundamentals are executed. And it seems like if younger players would do that, their court awareness would be so much better. Do you think about that when you're doing your commentary so that players will go, hey, I do need to think about that, because you see a lot of mistakes out there now, even at the Power 5 level, when it comes to court judgment that you wouldn't expect?
Well, I don't think young people listen to the radio and listen to games. I don't think they have the patience for it. I think they want something right now and hit me with something quick, give me something flashy, and move on down the road. I don't know of many young people that will listen to an LSU basketball game in its entirety unless his parents are sitting there and he's just some kind of crazy LSU fan. I know a lot of parents and older people and LSU fans listen to our broadcast because I get feedback all the time, but I'm not sure how many young people have the patience to sit down and listen to a 2-hour broadcast of any basketball game.
What about players that are watching a game on the SEC network or on ESPN and it involves LSU, and you've got a guy like Billis or regional commentators that are former coaches that
1 minute, Jimmy.
The players would have a great opportunity, to pick up some of those insights from coaches and former players that have gone through what they're going through now, or they're going to be future players.
Well, I think they'll watch it on TV because it's more immediate feedback as opposed to listening to it on the radio. That would be my thing. I think the TV thing is fine because they see it and they watch it, and it's something they can really touch as opposed to listening to somebody's voice on the radio.
Yeah, look, we've run out of time, unfortunately, but Coach, we got to get you back on here again soon. This is great. We're looking forward to doing it again next week. And most often, folks, we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and help somebody with the expectation to get nothing in return. Don't give to get, give to give. And we'll be back tomorrow. And Coach Brady, tell them how they can follow you on Twitter, because you put out a lot of really good stuff.
You're going to have to do that yourself. I don't know. They can look up my name and find me on Twitter if they want to do that. But I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, and let's talk next week. It's getting better and better every week. College basketball season starting to take over. We're going to have a little bit of a lull here before the bowl games and the playoffs start. But, hey, we'll be back tomorrow. We got Coach Houston Nutt joining us, Dan Matthews, Dudley Dawson. Got a great show. Until then, have a great day, everybody. We're out of here.